I'm Sherry Kohler-Gervais. I'm with the Beacon Council. I'm Vice President, Economic Development and Urban Initiatives. And I focus very much on small businesses. I love small businesses. And I'm particularly excited about the growth that small businesses can bring to Miami-Dade County and actually already brings. Just a few quick facts in terms of the Beacon Council. You know, we're the economic development arm, official economic development arm of Miami-Dade County. We've been in existence for about 30 years, and our main job is job creation for Miami-Dade County, ideally with higher wages. So on that note, I want to really say that we focus on certain sectors, which you likely already know, but they're in the sheet that's provided here. We look at what we can do to grow our businesses. We're 2.6 or 2.7 million in terms of total population in Miami-Dade County. Interestingly, composition is about 65% Hispanic. About 50% of our population was born outside of the country, which is also a very unique characteristic of Miami-Dade County. And we have about 129,000 to close to 130,000 businesses in Miami-Dade County. About 85% of them have 9 or less employees. And if you go according to SBA definitions, close to 99% are considered small businesses in Miami-Dade County. In terms of the number of jobs, it's about 1.3 million jobs. And again, about 44%, according to SBA definitions, come from our small businesses. So it's extremely important for us to work on growth. We thank Jody so much for that opportunity in terms of focusing on what is the #1 issue, opportunity for our small businesses, as reported to us by them, which is access to capital. So I just want to take a minute to talk about what I call my cheat sheet DIP, DIIP, and it's how we get involved with access to capital. Debt is certainly the #1 option, and we have representation here in terms of debt, so that would be traditional banking as well as non-traditional, which we'll talk about as well. We also have what I call investment, and on that end it's more focused on equity. And I don't know that we'll talk about it here, but there is another workshop following that will talk about the New Jobs Act. Is anyone familiar with the New Jobs Act? No. Quite interesting, can facilitate investment. I don't know if someone on the panel is familiar, but it can facilitate investment. It was will effectively become active in June, and it's JOBS, and I can certainly give you information on that as well. Crowdfunding and all the tools that are available. And then the other two that we won't be discussing, but they are tools that are available for bottom line access to capital, which is incentives, which as a Beacon Council, we're happy to share that information with you as terms of incentives that are available for you. And then the last one is procurement. And on the procurement end, there's something coming up, a tour or a workshop coming up focused on the military. I highlight this to you because the military is a huge potential customer from a procurement standpoint, and we would love to have you in that workshop as well. So on that note, again, focused on growth, #1 need is access to capital. We have a series of experts, but more importantly, I really want to thank Jody Johnson with ActionCOACH. Of course, she turned around. Jody Johnson of ActionCOACH, and introduce her because really she has taken the lead. She is a member of the Beacon Council. She is also an esteemed member of our Small Business Committee. And we are just so pleased that she's taken the lead in presenting this valuable information to you. So on that note, welcome to our home. And Jody, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. So welcome, everybody. I acknowledge you for being here this morning, early on a Friday, through the traffic, through the parking, to actually get here. So well done. And what that tells me is the level of commitment that you have to your business and to learning. And I acknowledge you for that as well. We believe that it takes enormous amounts of courage to be a small business owner, and that courage should be rewarded. So part of what we're providing through the Small Business Committee here at the Beacon Council, and obviously through our firm, which is ActionCOACH Business Coaching, is access to the learning that can allow you to shorten that period of time between when you can get something done versus when you don't have that information and it takes a good bit longer. So we have a great panel here this morning. I just want to create a bit of context, and that is there's a tremendous opportunity in South Florida right now for you to grow your business. which is the source of why we put this series together. The first part of it was on recruitment and retaining of talent, and the second one on getting your financial house in order and then access to funds and growing your business in that way. Because, as you may have noticed with all the growth here in Miami, the prompt of that was the expansion of the Panama Canal and the lock system there, where these ships would be coming in with 5 times what they used to be able to carry. So we had the port dredged, the railroad put its station back at the port again, moved it around at the airport. There's infrastructure at the airport, infrastructure in our roads, because the opportunity of having those ships come and port here and also in Fort Lauderdale, and then go with the cargo up on the trains, they could get to Norfolk 2 days faster than the ships could get there. So it was a huge opportunity for our area, as well as those containers that could leave Miami and go north, where before they used to come down with goods and then go back up empty. Right, so now this whole kind of ecosystem has been built around this and the opportunity that comes with that. So you may have noticed that there's large businesses and investors from all over the world that are focused on Miami. Everybody wants to be in Miami. Well, why? Because they see that economic opportunity, but it may not have been apparent to the small business owner. What we would like in this conversation today is to let you know about the funding that can allow you to grow in this economic cycle over the next 7 to 10 years, so that you can take your small business from $500,000 to 2, or from 2 to 10, or wherever it is that you're looking to go. And this panel here is a great resource. And we've got the CFO from Venture Hive. So those of you who are familiar with Venture Hive, I mean, how could you not be if you're in Miami? We have Nestor, who has gone through getting funding for a business he's buying. We have the neighborhood lending here, and then we have traditional banking with Andrew. So they're going to share with you, each of them, their unique perspectives, and then take good notes so that you can see how can what they're saying apply to your situation. And then obviously we have a good bit of handouts and information for you to leave with. So inside here is something that Gavin put together. This is Gavin, he's my assistant. And it has all manner of resources so that you have something you can walk away with and take action on right away. All right, so without further ado, why don't we go ahead and start? Nestor, why don't you start there and share your story with us? And then I'll be asking questions of them. We'll have a question and answer period at the end, but you can certainly ask your questions coming through, and then we'll go from there. But go ahead.
Great. Yeah. So again, my name is Nestor Villalobos. I'm currently a professor of entrepreneurship, business negotiation, and small business management over at FIU. I got my start in my career, worked for corporate America for 10 years, and then I got into startups. So I created my first startup, raised about $1.3 million in venture capital for that startup. And we're working out the details of that startup now, so we're finalizing a licensing agreement with a major player, so that worked out really well. Now I have a little bit more free time, so I've been involved in another small business that was a bad investment, and we've managed to turn it around. And I'm in the process of acquiring a business up in Fort Lauderdale that does promotional products. And so that business has been around for 20 years. And I first kind of went the traditional funding route, and now I'm kind of doing my own fundraising to buy that company. So I have experience both on the venture side and then also on the traditional bank side. And so, I get a lot of questions about how to raise venture capital. That's kind of what my experience has been in the past. And I just have a couple of notes here to, go over venture capital, and we can discuss that, I guess, down the road. But that's kind of my background, and that's what I know. My experience with startups is that there really isn't any traditional ways that you can raise capital for startups. So banks won't fund you if you're a startup because you have no track record, no history. It's very difficult to get a loan unless it's a personal loan, and not in the amount that you're probably looking for if it's a venture deal. And so venture funding basically means that you're going out to friends and family to raise money. You're going out to angel investors and potentially even VCs, which are venture capitalists. And it typically happens in that order. So when you go first to your friends and your family, they call it friends, family, and fools. Yes. And you ask them, hey, here's my crazy idea. And usually you can just go to your friends and family with a little paper and say, hey, this is my crazy idea. Will you lend me some money? And if it's a good enough idea, they might invest in you. At that point, after you've taken that investment, you've hit some milestones. Then you can go to an angel investor, somebody who does that professionally. But in that case, you need to start providing that person with deliverables. So you need to provide them with a business plan, an executive summary, potentially even a pitch deck, and a forecast. And so, once you've got the angel on board, he's invested, then you start growing your organization, you can start hiring people. Then you go to VCs. So VCs is the third step in the process. VCs are typically groups, right? They invest a lot more than traditional angel investors. And then after you've gone through the VC route, that's when you can start going to the banks. And once you have a track record of sales and profits and everything, that's when you get traditional lending. So it's all equity-based up until you hit that point where you have enough financial history to be able to raise money through a bank or whatever. So, some of the materials that you need ready if you're going to do venture capital raising, everybody always has a business plan, and I'm kind of moving away from that now, even though I make my students write one because it's a really good idea for you to kind of have a 5-year outlook in your business. But most venture capitalists and angels really don't read a business plan, especially if it's over 20 pages. So my recommendation is start with a really good executive summary, which is a 1-page document that highlights the who, the what, the why, and the where, and the when. Who's involved, what is it that you're doing, what is the problem that you're solving, how much money you're looking to raise, and why your company is such a great investment. And it's a 1-page, very visual. I have my students write executive summaries, and typically they'll give me something that looks like this, right, which is terrible. Because an angel is going to look at it and he's going to be like, yeah, okay, whatever, it's a lot of text. So my encouragement to my students is always, hey, make it very visual. Get a lot of cool graphics. Show me a hockey stick of your revenues and your projections, and make it something that somebody's going to see and oh wow, I want to read this. Don't make it full of text. So you have your executive summary. Your pitch deck is, usually a presentation that you give to an angel or a VC. That's somewhere between 10 and 20 slides. It's about a 10-minute presentation, and you address pretty much. There's about 10 to 12 different points that you have to address. And it's very visual. You don't really have that much text on the screen. It's more about you presenting and you showing how much you know about your business. Projections are something that I teach my students how to create, and that's something where, it's not usually the mistake people make is a top-down versus bottoms-up model. Top-down is where you say, oh, the industry's $1 billion, and if I just capture 1% of that, this business is going to be amazing. That's wrong. And I always tell my students, don't start from the top, start from the bottom. Tell me how many customers you're going to get. How are you going to get those customers? What's your lifetime value of that customer? Now take that customer and project out the revenues from the bottom up. So show me the customers first, the sales, and then show me the rest of the projections. And usually projections are about 5 years, so annually for 5 years. And then investor documents. So those are like your subscription agreements and everything. That's what the lawyer will help you with. And then finally, the business plan. And that's the last thing I recommend my students and my people I work with to do, because really nobody reads it anymore. It's good for you to have a plan, but an investor probably won't read it. If they ask for it, you should probably have it. But it's not as important as it used to be. Friends and family, how to identify friends and family. I have something that I call the Thanksgiving dinner test. So if I can take money from my uncle, right, and I know that if he loses that money and I can have dinner with him on Thanksgiving and he's not going to be upset with me, I'll take his money. But if it's money that I feel that he really needs or he's going to want, or this might cause an issue at Thanksgiving dinner, I don't even touch it. That's how I borrow money from friends and family. I make them pass the Thanksgiving dinner test. And then I have a couple more points maybe. So how much to ask for is something that I always get a lot. You want to have somewhere between 12 and 18 months of runway. And runway is basically calculated as your burn rate. So burn rate is what your expenses are versus how much you have in the bank. Okay, so if you're spending $5,000 a month in your expenses and you only have $10,000 in the bank, that's a runway of 2 months. Okay, so you want to have 12 to 18 months of runway. You want to, if you're going to raise money, you want to get 25% or less of the valuation of the business. So if your business is valued at $1 million, you don't want to raise more than $250,000. of $50,000, because then you're giving away a very big piece of the business. And don't raise too much because you want to stay frugal. If you raise too much, you might spend a little bit too lavishly. You need to be very, very humble. And then if you raise too little, you're going to disrupt operations when you have to stop and go out and raise more. And you don't want to do that. You want to be able to just forget about fundraising for a year. And positives, negatives of venture capital. So the positives are that you expand your business network, so you get more people involved in your business that are going to help you and give you contacts and vendors. You get more access to capital down the road. So most of these investors have deeper pockets. So if they fund you in the first round, potentially they'll fund you in the second round. You get to focus on the business. You don't have to worry about money. And you have a very fast ramp, and that's very important when you're creating a startup that has a really good idea that can be copied easily, and you need to expand very rapidly. That's when venture capital is very important. The negatives to raising venture capital is you have less control over your business. So you have other investors, and they have a say in what you can do in your business. And finally, you have more chefs in the kitchen, right? You have more people telling you what you should and shouldn't do, and sometimes that's not a good thing. You want to be able to control your own destiny. And so, I'll wrap it up saying, one really good book that I recommend if you're thinking about venture capital is a book called Venture Deals by Brad Feld. And that was one of probably the best books I read about how to raise venture capital and how to structure it. So,
And what is his name again?
Brad Feld.
Brad.
And the book is called Venture Deals.
How do you spell it?
F-E-L-D?
F-E-L-D, and the book's title is Venture Deals.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was very interesting.
I'll try to wrap it up in 4 minutes.
You did great. Thank you. Okay, Mike, what do you have to share with us?
So Nestor took a lot of the wind out of my sails. So actually, I was gonna talk a little bit about VC as well, but did a really good job covering all of that. So again, Mike Pacifico, CFO of Venture Hive. I joined Venture Hive about 3 months ago, so relatively new both to Venture Hive and to Miami in general. Spent about 6 years up in Eagle, New York City, on Wall Street. Investment banking. I've done investment banking both for startup type companies, so pre-revenue through call it 20 million in revenue, helping them with Series B through or Series A through Series C capital raises with obviously venture capital. And then I've worked with more established businesses, 50 million, 100 million plus, taking them from more traditional types of capital raises through IPOs, for example. A lot of my experience is in technology, education technology. I spent a couple of years at Amazon. I had founded an e-commerce company, and before I joined Venture Hive, I was actually with an education technology company in New York for about a year and a half, and we raised 20 million through venture capital. It was actually through part strategic and part traditional VC. So one thing I'll mention as I get into it is some of the options that maybe fall outside of traditional VC. And in our case, there's a large company called Pearson, which is an educational publishing company, and they actually were our lead investor. And it was an interesting dynamic I'll talk a little bit about. So funding for growth. When I was thinking about this, like in terms of what to tell you guys, I was thinking more along the lines of the companies that are currently in Venture Hive. So what do they come to us with the need for? And we have companies in Venture Hive, anywhere from pre-revenue to some folks that are doing 3 million plus in revenue. So they're sort of all over the spectrum in terms of how developed they are, how large their teams are. Some of them are looking for funding, some of them are a bit more self-sustaining. And the biggest questions they tend to have are, first of all, do I need to raise equity? If I do, how much? And what are the pros and cons of doing so? So as Nestor said, they're not going to have access to traditional banks. And at least for most of our guys, they've exhausted sort of that friends and family and fools round. So they're looking for that next chunk. And the first question is why? Why are you raising money? Right? I think sort of a characteristic of the current environment, at least as it relates to VC and startups and small businesses, is fundraising in and of itself being a goal, which I think shouldn't be the case. I mean, if you're raising money, you should definitely have a specific use for that money, especially as Nestor said, if it's equity, you're giving away ownership. I mean, the only thing worse than raising too little is raising too much. So, be very sure what your use of funds is for. Is it for inventory? Is it for scaling the technology platform? Is it for personnel? And if it's for personnel, there's an interesting route to think about in terms of giving ownership to someone, to have them be a co-founder, or have them come on board and help you in whatever capacity that you need, to not, you don't necessarily need to be raising funds for that, but you're giving up ownership in a different way. So, in terms of runway, I think what Nestor said spot on. We tell our companies it's 12 to 18 months. That's the ideal. If you're under 6, that's not ideal. If you're over 18, that's probably too much. I mean, the ideal scenario from a fundraising perspective is, you're raising just enough to kind of get you to that next stage, whether that stage is, a minimal viable product, or whether it's commercialization, whatever your sort of milestone is, that's what the funding should get you to. So if you have too little, if we're going below 12 months, below 6 months, it's just really hard to plan strategically, right? If you're constantly worrying about sort of next month, how are you going to do payroll, or what sort of bills are starting to pile up, it just takes your focus away from running the business. So, targeting that 12 to 18 months in terms of amount that you're looking for, I think is super important. In terms of, how to present yourself to raise that sort of funding, I would agree 100% with everything Nestor said in terms of, business plans. I mean, at Venture High, we actually don't even have the guys and gals write business plans. We go right into sort of the investor deck, 7 minutes tops, anywhere from, like you said, 10 to 20 pages. You're kind of hitting the who, what, why of your company, and I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that VCs and angels, they don't have time. They're getting pitched from tens if not hundreds of people on a weekly basis. So having something that's short, sweet, that's what's going to get their attention, not a super dense 10-pager on what makes your business so great. As I referenced before, I think there are some sort of alternative routes to venture capital, and I don't want to discuss everything Nestor did, so I'll pivot a little bit. And from what we do at Venture Hive, we also run an accelerator, right? And what an accelerator is, it's essentially a way to get funding, and you're participating in an accelerator program, and the programs can sort of vary in terms of what they're going to focus on. So they might be industry specific, they might be functionally specific. In Venture Hive's case, we focus on industries that are tech enabled and that are relevant to Miami. So trade and logistics, hospitality, tourism, fintech, to name a few. And we give our companies, it's $25,000. It's a non-equity grant. We have 400 plus applicants for the current one, and we select 10. There are a lot of accelerators like that around. So it's definitely worth, depending on where you are in your business, it's definitely worth exploring if you might fit within an accelerator type program. The one big caveat to that route is just be very aware of what the terms are of the funding, because some accelerators, unfortunately, it's gotten a bit to a point where a lot of accelerators are looking for a significant portion of ownership to give you that funding. Right, so Venture Hive, we try to, Susan, our CEO, wants to keep it as pure as possible. So we don't take any equity, but that's not the norm. It tends to be around, call it 2 to 6-ish% of equity for anywhere from 25 to maybe up to 100 grand in funding. So just something to keep in mind. But there are a lot. I was sort of shocked when I started digging in and just realizing the sheer number of accelerators out there. Another interesting angle, depending again where you are in your business, is strategic partnerships. So I'll bring up my example. So the company I was at in New York is called Voxy. It was English language learning. It was a technology platform, and Pearson is more of a traditional educational publisher, and it made a lot of sense to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we do. You guys are already in the space. You don't have a product like ours, but you have a super well-established distribution network. We could bring something to the table to you guys, and in return, great to have you as our lead investor provide guidance. So it worked out really well. I think it's a route you have to be careful with, because you don't want to give a competitor necessarily too much information, and a lot of the best strategic partners might also, to some extent, be competitors. But it's an interesting route, depending on your relationships with companies that you work with on a day-to-day. Something to think about. I think there was Nestor covers sort of deliverables. At Venture High, we run a pretty structured diligence module, for lack of a better term, where we walk the companies through the stuff that you need to prepare, which Nestor hit upon. The financials, totally agree with the bottom-up approach, and then again, kind of keeping your pitch short and sweet. I mean, that's the best way to go. And in terms of actually reaching out to these guys, so I've seen a few routes that are pretty successful. So one is obviously conferences. I mean, no matter what business you're in, there's a conference for it, and at those conferences, there's always going to be investors. They'll be lurking around. There might be a panel, but they're going to be there. So if investors are familiar, or they like your space, it's a great place to meet folks. I've seen a lot of successful alumni network. You'd be surprised how many of your alumni, you might have kind of knew when you were in school, or loosely knew, maybe second, third connection, but have gone on to be in some sort of world or some position that that could be a great way to angle for some guidance. On that note, I found the best ways to kind of break into some of the VC guys. It really is. It's sometimes as simple as emailing them. These guys are used to getting email pitches on a daily basis, and more often than not, if you position it as, hey, I'm looking for advice, sometimes, versus I'm looking for funding, they're a little bit more open to having a conversation. And so Venture Hive ourselves, I mean, we're also a startup, and we've had conversations with VCs, and we tend to go that route a lot, where we'll say, hey, this is what we do at Venture Hive. We're thinking of scaling. What advice do you have? What's the best way to position this model? What would you be looking for in terms of growth trajectories or unit economics, or all the sort of things that Nestor was touching upon from what would be in a deck. So if you're really just not sure where to start, in addition to the obvious resources, just by Googling, it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet if you position yourself as looking for advice versus, hey, I need money. And I have a few resources, but I can talk to you guys if anyone's interested after, just in terms of some of the online stuff that I've come up with. I think that's about it from Ryan.
Thank you so much. So we'll shift gears to Andrew. Andrew is banking, and share with us how you see building on that, but also what your bank provides.
Sure. So Andrew Ashby, I am the market executive for South Broward and Miami-Dade for business banking, and our segment is small business and mid-sized businesses. So we go anywhere from companies with $1 million all the way to 100 million. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
So I'll tell you that if you don't know, it's the largest Florida-based bank based in Miami Lakes, and we've just been voted the 4th best bank in the U.S. believe it or not. And we're the fastest growing markets, which is Miami and New York. So we'll continue to expand banks there as well. So I'm going to touch on some of the things. I've also been a professor, teaching entrepreneurship. Haven't done it in a couple of years. Why banking? It's cheap money. I mean, banking is just cheap money. And believe it or not, banks don't like to lose money. You know? So a lot of people have this idea that banks should always lend money, but they don't like to lend, they don't like to lose money. So that's why the money is always cheaper, because the risks, they always will take on less risk and not greater risk than a venture capitalist or an angel investor. So if you go to a bank, you're always going to see that your rate is going to be a lot lower than a venture capitalist. But obviously the bank will lend to more startups. I'll give you examples of companies that I've lent to. One of the greatest rewards of my job, I have a team of bankers that report to me in the marketplace. The reward for my job is seeing businesses grow from very, very small, tiny companies to very large companies. I'll give you a perfect example. We had a guy who actually bought a company, and the company was failed completely. It actually was attached to the Marlins Stadium, and it was a painted company that failed. And they wanted him to invest in it, like as an angel investor, and look at the numbers. And he said, you know what, I'll buy your company out. This company had assets of about $2 million. We bought the company for $65,000. $65,000. Today, that company has revenues of $20 million. And the way we helped him was, he came to us and he said, look, I'm buying this company. The company had, some established trends. But we took a chance on him. And we kind of consolidated some debt, gave him a line of credit to be able to buy more assets. And he was able to go out and get a lot of different jobs. What he did was he kept one key employee who knew how to structure the business, how to do everything within that company. He knew nothing about painting, believe it or not. Now today, these guys are all over the country. They've taken on big jobs like in Disney, the Avatar, and the Star Wars. They've painted all those, and they paint the walls that you see on the on 95. They do all that painting, commercial painting. And now they've actually established a business in New York, and they're growing at a rapid rate. They'll do about $30 million this year. And so therefore, that's why you want to kind of like, sometimes traditional lending is the way to go, because once you've established yourself to a certain degree, then we can help take you to that next level. We have a lot of different companies that we do, and that's the most rewarding part of it. I see him like once a quarter, and we discuss where he is today, where he wants to go, and how the bank can help him to grow. So those are the types of things that traditional banking does. These guys are right. We would, normally don't lend to startups, but we have in the past. But it has to be a startup that has great potential to do well. We've done a few, not a lot. And sometimes we use the SBA product to help us with that, whether it be a 7A or a 504 to help us. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the SBA products. Okay. So a 504 is traditionally around real estate. So if you're looking to purchase real estate, the SBA in most situations will guarantee up to about 40% of the money that the bank will lend you. So if that business fails, the SBA would give the bank about 40% of that, or normally take the debenture out to sell it in the open market. Believe it or not, the SBA, the government makes a lot of money on that debenture, believe it or not. The 7A is more for like working capital or equipment, and they normally would guarantee about 75% of that to the bank. If that company was to fail, and normally they take the debenture out and sell it in the open market for a lot more money. So that's how some banks are able to lend smaller companies who would normally not qualify for a traditional bank. So that's just a quick synopsis of how the SBA works. And the SBA stands for Small Business Administration. So you might want to look that up.
I tried to go down the SBA route.
It's tough. They ask for a lot more stuff. But it's one of the choices that you have if you can't get traditional lending.
The SBA also have an arm that works with VCs.
Okay.
They also have an arm that will help reduce their risk.
Yeah. So that's kind of my spiel on traditional lending. All types of loans. We loans for equipment, loans for purchasing real estate, all types of different types
Okay, my name is Deborah Salas. I'm the program director of the Greater Miami Business Opportunity Fund. We actually are similar to a banking traditional, but we veer off a little bit. So we are a full documentation type of loan, but we open our parameters to people that wouldn't traditionally fit in that conventional bank financing. I work for an organization called Neighborhood Lending Partners. We've been around 23 years, primarily in affordable housing and community revitalization space. But about a year ago, we realized that there was a need in the community, that we needed to provide small businesses access to affordable capital and entrepreneurs to help them grow a potential dream business that they had. So what happens in the community when you go to a traditional bank, and you are a startup, because we do startups, by the way. We love startups, and that's one of our missions. So job creation, you're going to start your business, you're probably going to create jobs. So we ask, we're a nonprofit, and we ask approximately for every $50,000 you borrow that you're going to create a job. And that's our ultimate mission, is to help people, get jobs within the community. Another mission we have is we are that transitional space. We want you ultimately to become bankable, because that is the goal. If you can become bankable and your business is thriving, you will go back to the traditional bank, free up our money, and we can help another new small business grow their business. So we work primarily, exclusively with denied bank customers. So we have a very specific program, as Sherry knows. It doesn't meet the needs of everybody. Like you said, we're all talking about different needs, different resources for small business. But for a startup, we can really help transition you into the small business world arena. So how we work is we see that you go to a bank, you get denied for a variety of reasons. Could be credit, could be cash flow, could be collateral. And what do small businesses typically do after they go there? Payday lenders, high interest payday lenders, 18%, 20%. I cannot tell you how many calls I get a day of people and business owners that say basically they've sold themselves to the devil, because every day they wake up and they get daily withdrawals, okay, daily, including Saturdays, some of them, if you read the fine print. So we come in at a very reasonable rate, okay? We're hovering around 8.25%. You're always going to get cheaper. He is right. At a traditional bank, that is going to be the lowest interest rate, but they also like to minimize their risk. We do riskier loans, but I'm going to say a caveat to that. We do riskier loans, but we are full documentation. We do our due diligence. We're going to ask for, we're very similar like an SBA. You're going to get a list. If you're not organized and you're not interested in showing us, full transparency of all your financials, then we're not probably the lender for you. Then you just want to sign on the dotted line, no business summary, no executive summary. That's not us. We are going to look at that. We don't want to see a 20-page, I agree, that's totally outdated. We want under 5 pages, please. But we want it succinct, to the point, but we will ask you that. So we like to come in at that 5-year, we only offer one product, term loan, 5 years. That's it. And we have very specific guidelines. We help you in a 3-month period, 90 days. So you come to me, you want to start your business, you have a great plan, business plan. You have a great projections, and we can work with technical assistance. We partner all the time, and I'll send people out to get some assistance in the community. Sherry and I work together a lot. So, but you do, as a startup, you want to really focus on your projections, because that's all we have. You have no track record of doing business and showing the cash flow. So we are going to rely heavily on your projections. So you would come to us, and basically if you want a term loan for working capital, we ask that you use up that money within 90 days. So if you want $100,000 term loan from us to start your business, we are gonna ask that within the first 90 days, you use up all that funding. Because let's say you borrow that money from us and if you take out $50,000, you leave $50,000 for the next 6 months, you're not demonstrating to us that you really needed the money. And I'm a nonprofit. Our mission is to help small businesses that really need the money. So that's why we ask that you use up all the funds within 90 days. Now, sometimes I have people lower their loan amount because they realize I can't use $500,000 in 90 days because we go up to $500,000. We start at $50,000, we go up to $500,000. We pretty much can finance any type of industry except, and I'll tell you, we'll do restaurants, a lot of banks don't like that industry. We can do owner-occupied real estate. We cannot do 2 things. Investment properties we cannot do, and we don't do any kind of adult entertainment. But besides that, you can come to us with almost anything, and we'll entertain it as long as, I like to fall back on common sense. Does your business plan make sense? Okay? Because when you're pitching it to all these people to invest money to you, and what did you say? I love what you said, friends, family, fools. Okay, even the fool is going to say, maybe, does this make sense? So I think a lot of people, when you're about to start a business, that you should really explore what is, we talked about, I think you talked about sources and uses. What do you want this loan for? Does it make sense that I borrow $200,000 or do I really only need $75,000? You need to sit down and strategically plan it out. So that's pretty much about my program and what we have to offer. We are similar to a bank, but we veer off a little bit our parameters where we can go all the way down to 600 credit score. 600 credit score. We can, we do have some deal killers, like bankruptcy less than 3 years, foreclosures less than 3 years, or loan modification or short sales. We like to see you reestablish good credit, and those need to be over 3 years. So, but besides that, we are an alternative lender. We're an avenue for you to explore, but I am a loan program. So if you borrow my money, it's not like at the end of the transaction, at the closing, we're not going to hand you $100,000 and say, see ya. We are going to do that 90-day plan where you're going to show us, I want to purchase, let's say you want to borrow $100,000 and 80,000 of it, you want to purchase some machinery, some equipment for your new business. You are going to either send us the bill and we will pay the 80,000 directly to the vendor, or if you show proof that you have already paid it, like your Amex business, that you paid it, we can also reimburse you directly. There's 2 ways of doing it. We either pay the vendor directly, or you prove to us that you have already, spent that money and we will reimburse you. So, like I said, we're a loan program. I like to make that very clear. But it's a resource for you as a small business owner.
Can you please spell your name?
Sure. My name? Deborah. S-A-L-A-S. I give you cards later. And the term sheets, I put them all on. I will tell you if you, unfortunately you caught me in transition. We literally just moved offices this week. Okay, so I apologize, but I have not caught up with my printing materials, so contact my cell. My email is still the same. My cell, okay, and my email.
Okay, Deborah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
And I have a number of questions for the rest of the panel. So you spoke a great deal about startups. Do you also work with established businesses?
Yes, we can absolutely work with existing businesses, giving you capital to grow your business, yes.
And you were saying 50,000 for each job that gets created. So if people are looking
Loosely,
to,
that's kind of where we're at.
if people are looking to bring on team members, is that a loan that you do?
Yes, we can look at that. We can look at that, yeah.
Okay. Good. That was one of the questions I had because, I heard startup, and I wasn't sure if you were going to be able to to work with people that are established here.
Yes,
So-
yes, 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 yes. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. I went off on my, I tried to segregate myself from everybody else, something different.